Just don't know. And I'm really happy because, what we try to do is bring answers, and I don't have the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers or any of the answers sometimes, but the people we bring on the show are experts in their fields, and I'm really happy that David Krieger, granted us some time here from Berkshire Hathaway. David, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jeff?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm tired, actually. It's been a rough couple of months in the real estate. I live out in a fire area, so we've been dealing with that.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, very well. So explain to me a little bit about your business, where you're working, and some particulars so we can narrow in on some of the issues you may be facing or some of the issues that my listeners may want to hear about.
Of course. So I'm with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. I'm an agent in the Encino office. I focus on residential real estate. I represent both buyers and sellers in a wide range of prices, including in the luxury market. And I'm basically client-focused, relationship-based, rather than transactional. And I could explain that, if you'd like me to, but that's what I do.
Okay.
So my area of focus is not just the San Fernando Valley. Some of my clients have asked me to help them in areas such as the West Side, Beverly Hills, and other areas as well. So because I'm client-focused, I'm not working in a small farm. I have a little bit of a larger canvas.
Okay, let me ask you a question. I read an article today online, and I'm constantly trying to re-educate myself as to the new buyers, the new sellers, people who are in the market maybe for the first time, or a whole new generation of people that I don't know anything about except for my kids and their problems enough. So how are you reaching people who necessarily aren't driven to call a real estate agent who want to do all their work online? How are you connecting to this type of buyer?
Okay, so number one, I've been doing this 8 years, so my sphere of people who know me or have known my work is constantly expanding, and so I spend a lot of time working to contact my clients and stay in touch with them.
Great.
So that's one of the sources of my business. In the last year, I've really kicked up my social media posting. So I'm doing targeted emails to my clients, and also, I'm on LinkedIn, which is, I think, how you found me,
right?
And Instagram. So I'm starting to get more and more followers who are paying attention to my business.
And the message that you bring to them online, social media-wise, and in person, what would you say is the main thrust of how because you said you were client-focused, but how does that appear to them when you're talking to them?
Well, I hope it appears as sincere, because it is.
Right.
But when I say that my business is relationship-based, for me, it's not about just getting through a transaction, but establishing a relationship for the long term. And that's where more business comes, more referrals come. People, that I know that I've sold properties to who have had the experience of working with me contact me and say, I'm making a move, I'm downsizing, I'm upsizing, my family's expanding, and I like to work with them to help them not only find a property, but obtain a result that, would exceed their expectations. So I work very hard to earn that trust every day.
Tell me about the market. Okay, let's get a little bit specific about the areas you're working.
So let's maybe talk a little bit about the San Fernando Valley and what I'm seeing there, because I live there and and my office is there. I'm seeing that the inventory levels have gone up since last year. A year and a half ago, we were very, very much in a seller's market. I think that is balancing out right now. It's perhaps a slight advantage to sellers, but there's lots of opportunities for buyers as prices have plateaued a little bit, and in some instances have dipped. That being said, I think that I'm still really bullish on real estate long term, and I think that the market fundamentals compared to 2008 are very, very different right now.
Right.
So I think that there is a degree of caution in the business right now in the market, but people are continuing to buy and sell, and that's where I'm focused.
When a buyer and a seller, right, they get together, they make an agreement, and if a buyer and seller, if they're both unhappy, that's usually a pretty good deal, right? Because now both of them are giving. And so you're seeing more of this now. How do you tell a seller that they're priced too high?
Well, listen, when the question really is, when would I have that conversation? Hopefully it's before I take the listing.
Of course.
Because I'm interested, and I tell my sellers this, I'm interested in selling their property, not getting the listing.
Right.
So in addition to the choice of which realtor to go with, I think that the most important decision that a seller can make is to really come up with the right price. And it's through my guidance that I help them to see that. Now, that being said, sometimes there's a little bit of a gap between what I'm showing them and what their expectations are.
Right.
So then, it really becomes a question of seeing whether or not this person would be willing to sell their property in terms of what the market will bear.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, what you do is you have a listing that's just going to sit. And you probably know this very well. If you're on the market 2 or 3 weeks and you haven't gotten any offers or any calls, the market is telling you something. If
That's
you care
right.
to pay attention.
That's right. I often find that when in competition with others for listings, that you'll find an agent or two who will just what we call buy the listing, right? They'll tell the seller anything the seller wants to hear just to get something significant on paper, and then figure they'll grind them later and reduce price later. I always think that's the worst way to go. It's the worst way to build trust, and it just wastes the time of the seller. But sellers want to hear what they want to hear. They go to Zillow, they see what's listed there, which is usually 10 to 15% higher than what it should be listed at. How do you combat Zillow and other these online companies that seem to have a high expectation for their sellers?
I'm really glad we're talking about this because there's a lot of disruptors in the market and entities that their whole value proposition is working at a lower commission.
Right.
And I can tell you with confidence that real estate, it can be simple, but transactions are complex things. And there's so many details and things that I do in a transaction to walk my clients through so they get a good result. I just don't think that technology, even though technology is increasing and advancing, can replace the guidance of a good agent who knows the market and is informed and has a brokerage behind them that knows how to market and present properties in the best possible light.
I think I agree with you. I think the experience that an individual brings after being in the business and knowing a particular market is quite a bit different than doing an online search and knowing everything. It just is.
There's no question about it.
Now, would you shout out your phone number for people who want to probably give you a call, especially if they're looking for an agent in the San Fernando Valley?
Absolutely. So my number is 818-370-6024.
Great. Excellent. You have a website or something?
I do. David Krieger, spelled Kryiger. So it's www.davidkrieger.com.
Okay, excellent. And I just have one last question. When you're working with buyers, obviously I work with a lot of buyers too. When do you decide whether the buyer is real or whether the buyer is not real? We have about 30 seconds.
That's a really good question. It's instinct that I've developed over years, but of course, my definition of a buyer is someone who actually buys.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're in a transaction or let's say an escrow with someone and you begin to sense their anxiety, et cetera. I really only want to work with people who are committed to the process and that I can help, and that's most of the time.
Right.
I think that the time at which I make a decision on whether or not that person's actually a buyer can vary depending on their commitment to the process.
David, thank you very much. We're out of time, but I really appreciate it. I want to do it again to get an update later on in the years to see what's happening in Encino and obviously in the Valley too.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. That's David Krieger from Berkshire Hathaway. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Mortgage Voice with Jeff Barton. We'll be right back with more in just a moment. For more information on today's topic, Email Jeff Barton at info@malibufunding.net. Now, back to the Mortgage Voice with your host, Jeff Barton.